can.
Don't need to
But
worry
you can
about
get
it.
part of your face if you move closer.
I'm holding it right.
Sure.
That's the one you gave us, right?
I took it
Which
out.
button?
Try the laser. There you go.
Okay, everybody, I just want to thank everyone for having interest in this course and for coming out. And this is the Teaching the Hybrid CERT course. I am Angie. I needed a reminder. Welcome, Angie. Thank you. We're going to start off here with our basic outline. We're going to go through an orientation and then introductions. Then we'll do the 2018 basic training update, the hybrid CERT basics, the hybrid CERT best practices, and the train the trainer opportunities and other opportunities that are out there and available for us. So let's start off with, has everybody had a chance to sign in on the sign-in sheet? We do have a couple of breaks built in, or at least one. The restrooms are right down this hallway right where there's stairs and ramp. It is a little dark, so be careful. And then there's a men's and women's there. We have a drinking fountain here. Emergency exits are marked. They're here, down at the bottom of the ramp, and out this way if we have a need for emergency exits. Please silence all cell phones because we are recording. You do not have to take notes. If you took the packet that was available, all the slides and anything that you would need to take a note on should be in there. And if you click on the QR code, you will get to the slides. There is no Wi-Fi here, so for those of you that are trying. So, how is this course, the hybrid course, different from the Train the Trainer? It does introduce many of the Train the Trainer concepts, provides context to what that is taught in Train the Trainer. It does not replace the traditional Train the Trainer program. Most of you would probably still like to have that. And this course that we're doing here does not replace the Hybrid CERT Train the Trainer course if you are interested in going on and getting certified in the Hybrid CERT Train the Trainer. This course we just put together because we're kind of doing multi-district team teaching and stuff like that. We just wanted to get everybody kind of on the same page and kind of look at what the program entailed. And then use experiences from CERT veteran instructors. We're showing you a lot of slides, but in the course yourself, when you teach the course, you want to kind of limit the time that you spend in front of the classroom talking a lot and do present a lot of hands-on activities. And you can get a lot of experiences from CERT veteran instructors there. So we're going to go around and kind of do a little introduction. So if you can say who you are, maybe how long you've been in CERT and what city you're with, and if you are a program manager or emergency manager, please let us know. We'll start here.
I'm Lindsay Hybrid. I live in Lindon. I've been involved with, probably specifically with CERT just for 3 years, but I've been my ward emergency prep specialist. So for my neighborhood, I'm in charge of all the block captains and trying to recruit block captains and trying to retain block captains and all of that fun stuff. And I've also been a teacher 2 times in CERT courses since we started teaching them here in Lindon.
Okay, I'll stand up so I can say hi. My name is Marie Mendenhall, and I'm actually from here in Lindon. I live just
CERT basic training, and I'm going to kind of walk through some of the updates that have been done. A lot of us have a lot of time in CERT, so you probably recognize that there's been changes from the traditional to the hybrid. Some of us are really new, and so you don't really know that it was a change, because it's just the way it's been. But we're going to kind of walk through what some of the changes have been. With this hybrid, if you are Train the Trainer certified, you do not need to recertify. Some of the units have been, since we've gone to the hybrid program, they have been kind of moved to different units or reordered so that they make a little more sense in where they're at, and to help kind of flow more cohesively and help with time. There are more exercises included. Like we said, that with the hybrid program, we want the learning section to be on the online section, so that the hands-on time can be really focusing on hands-on and activities where they can really get proficient with different exercises. Through talking through some of the stuff, we realized there's a lot of talk about major catastrophes and what would happen if we were deployed for a major...
Got it.
Recorded forever. But there is, you know, we kind of tend to start focusing on what we would do if we were deployed for something major, for the fire, for the earthquake, or something like that. But really, a lot of, or more likely, our training is going to be used on something small scale, something in our personal homes, in our neighborhoods, or in our day-to-day life. And so kind of really focus or thinking about that while you're going through your exercises, and help them understand that this is something that they potentially could use anytime, not just in a major event. There has been content added and content removed. The content that has been removed, you can still teach, but you want to make sure that whatever you put into whatever you're teaching has been approved by your program manager, and then also incidentally your emergency manager, so that we're kind of going in order with how the program wants to be. Don't remove content yourself. So with how they have now built the hybrid program, we want to, what is left in there, we're leaving in there. So don't remove anything yourself. There has been a new hazard annexed to include some avalanche training portions to that.
Question. Like when you're talking new, you're talking 2019, right?
Correct.
5 years ago. So there's nothing really...
No, and that's like I said, some of you are not are aware of the differences between the two and have already been teaching it the way it is, and then some of us are new to the program. So you don't really know that it's been a change because it's kind of been there. But it is, if you've seen the checklist, it is that current 2020 is the checklist. So these are our units. Unit 1 is pretty much the same. Unit 2 has some changes to it in organization. Unit 3 has some changes in it that we'll talk about a little bit later. Unit 4, but the big changes are 2, 5, 6, and 7 in some information that are taught in those units. In our terminology, we are no longer using CERT member, we are volunteers. Victim or patient is now survivor. I don't know how exactly that fits into, if it's just a minor thing, but we would still be a survivor. Dead, we're just not going to use and say, even though there is some training for that and some of like the triage and stuff that we do train, we're just not going to use the term dead, although
Or at least we can't declare dead.
We can't work, because we don't pronounce anyone dead or declare them dead, we're not gonna use the term dead. Incident commander is now being replaced with team leader for CERT, because in deployment or any situation, there will be an incident commander in either the police department, the city, or the fire department. There will already be an incident command that we would answer to, so we would not assume that role. So we would be, within our CERT team, we would be the team leader. So Unit 1 is disaster preparedness. In Unit 1, the updates are, there's more in-depth info on home car workplace emergency kits. It's a good opportunity to share your kit and let them see what might be in a kit of someone that has been in a while, get some ideas of what needs to go in there. We are using whole community instead of citizen core, so ignore it when you see it in the corner of anything. But so we are whole community instead of citizen core, like it is in CERT. We are a community emergency response team. And there are 2 new exercises that can be used when you go through the hybrid program. It actually has some exercises in there. There's 2 new exercises within that. Unit 2 is CERT organization. This has been moved from Unit 6 up to Unit 2, where it kind of makes the rest of the units make a little more sense. There is some mention of self-activation and what that means. Again, we're going to use team leader instead of incident commander. And then instead of FLOP, we're going to use IFLOP and add into the FLOP acronym intelligence and investigation.
That's regarding ICS too. Make sure that's clear.
What does IFLOP stand for? Acronyms and I are not
You
friends.
took notes.
I took notes because I can't remember everything.
Finance,
So-
logistics.
Floating point operations per second.
Sorry, I can't hear that. It's echoing really bad. Say that out loud.
So the I is intelligence and investigation. And then we go to finance, logistics, operations, and planning.
Oh, yeah. It's like I know all those now. Thanks.
I know, but I can't remember it when I put on the spot.
Yeah.
The tabletop exercise that was in Unit 2 has been removed, and then there is 1 new exercise in there. Unit 3, disaster medical operations, part 1. The start triage is now an optional, and if you look on your checklist, it does outline on there what exercises are optional exercises. But we now have the start triage now optional. The RPM has been replaced with EMS.
I was gonna say
Which stands for what?
Pulse, motor,
pulse,
Sensation.
motor, and sensory.
Yeah.
Wait, pulse, motor. They changed. I know the EMTs have changed it in some places to CMS, so circulation, motor, sensory, because they've had people react
Complain
unkindly
about
about
the EMS.
EMS. Yes.
Yeah, I know somebody that has strong feelings about that. But the 3 killers term has been removed. Bleeding is checked before the airway. Pressure points and elevation has been removed. New content for opening airway, including the recovery position, has been added. And removed is the head tilt chin lift, and it's been replaced with the jaw thrust maneuver in there. Instruction for tourniquet has been added. And then the first aid that was in Unit 4 has now been moved up to Unit 3. We've removed inhalation burns and wound cleaning, and there's 2 new exercises in there. And then the exam gloves that we all had so much fun with is now optional.
That's so fun.
Unit 4, Disaster Medical Operations Part 2. The first aid has been moved to Unit 3. MASH casualty incidents has been added, instruction in there, but then again, also try to include just some recognition or having them think about that it could also be, everything that we learn is most likely going to be used in our day-to-day, but the mass casualty incidence is there. Sanitation has been reduced, treatment area has been reduced, and then assessment detail has been reduced.
Sanitation?
He's like sanitation.
Just ignore him, we're in psychology.
So Unit 5, Disaster Psychology, has been moved up in order to give it more significance and more time. It's been moved up in order. Working with survivors and emotional response. There's a self-care toolbox. Listen, Protect, Connect discussion has been added. Stabilizing survivors section has been improved. And then a section of say this instead of that has been added. The 5 5s, freeze, fight, faint, I can't even
Five
say
Fs.
them. 5 Fs, the 5 5s. Critical incident stress and debriefing has been removed, and informing the family of a death scene has been removed. Unit 6, fire safety and utility controls. Hazmat signage is become a more global, harmonized system. CERT, removed to the CERT fire sites up, and an exercise has been added. 7, there was no significant changes, but they have added 4 classroom exercises. And 8, content is almost entirely new. They've added the active shooter run, hide, fight, added improvised explosive devices or IEDs, cyber attacks, added until help arrives, and added preparing your community exercise. So the annexes, we've added avalanche, and we've removed pandemic and influenza.
Just barely before the pandemic hit.
Yeah. And now we're all an expert. Here in 12 hours of hands-on, and then our mock.
Well, you want to keep in mind too, if I may say, how many people you have in your class. If you have a full class, you want to make sure that you're attentive enough, so that might take more time. So, that's going to take hours.
Yep. And we'll also talk about class size coming up here. So online CERT, if you registered for the online portion, this is what your your outline will look like. You have all these units. It'll tell you whether you started or not, and it also has that optional triage unit. It's not part of the core content anymore, but you can do that if you want. Again, different jurisdictions had very different approaches to triage, so that's why they pulled that out. This is what the online training will look like this is Unit 3's starting screen. You'll see, let's see, at the top, there's that icon on the left. It looks like a page with a corner turn. That's a link to the PDF of the participant manual. So if anyone wants to really look through that big beast, they can. They can load the PDF. And if you want to print it, you can. The little thing on the right there, that shows you how many slides are in that unit and what number you're on. So we kind of have a good idea of the progress. And down in the lower right, these are the controls. You have the, is that volume? No, that's the restart. The restart set the volume. Next is the button you just need to pay attention to the most, because that's what you'll use the most. Each unit has a slide that shows you the objectives. It tells you ahead of time what we're going to cover, similar to what we did here, where we're telling kind of what we're going to cover. So, how to control bleeding, treatment for shock, gives you just a really high level. It doesn't get into the weeds yet. Then further into it, here we are at slide 11. This is talking about patient approach. Great summary. This is the kind of thing we'll talk about later. This is the kind of thing where if you're going to use slides, even in your hands-on class, as a background thing, and you're practicing things like an approach to a patient, this is the kind of thing that might be useful in the background on a slide on the wall, just as a reference, not as a teaching from scratch. So when you finish the online program, you'll be given a certificate. It will be emailed to you, and it'll also be on the screen. What we've told our students before is get that certificate any way you can think of. You can take a picture of it, you can take a screenshot of it, you can forward us the email, you can print it out and bring it to class. We just need to see that you finished, because that is one of the requirements for graduating CERT. Using this hybrid program, you have to finish that online portion. The guidance in the program guide that you have, guidance is very strongly pushing having that online training completely done before the first class in the hands-on classroom. In our experience, it's been very difficult to make that happen, if not impossible. There's a few go-getters who finish that stuff ahead of time, but always, at this first class, we've had several people who haven't started it yet. So that actually changes quite a bit how we approach that first unit. So what we've been telling people is that first class, we introduce the idea of that online, even though we have already mentioned it in our email communications with them, but we tell them how important the online training is, and we tell them you have to have this next piece finished before the next class. So they understand that expectation, starting out here. There are also digital credentials. We haven't pursued it much here. I have this set up on my phone for my account, but you can set it up through your online training. Once you have the online training complete, you're actually invited to set up your online credentials through the Merit app. And that's a thing that, again, I haven't seen used a lot, but it's something that also some other trainings might factor in. Like when I log in, it shows me all my completions, including several classes and presentations I attended at the National CERT Association conference a couple years ago. So it kind of tracks everything that you've trained that's fed into this program. So the in-class training, the practical approach is what they sometimes call it. So the practical program, it focuses on building that muscle memory and actually doing, because it's one thing to watch, it's another thing to actually do. So it does fulfill the requirements for training. The lecture portion, you don't have to worry about. The slides, you don't have to worry about. You can always go back and review the slides. Classroom reinforces, doesn't replace the online training. And it starts building that team cohesion. Who here was trained under the old traditional program with a lot of slides and a lot of class time? Yeah. I miss that. When this was rolled out, and I was told, you need to start using this, I resented it. I dug in my heels and I did not like it. And then I thought through a bit more. I liked how for 8 weeks, 3 hours each night, the team suffered together and came together and bonded in that frustration experience. So that was really great, but then the more I thought about it too, well, were we really bonding while we were watching the slideshow? Or were we actually bonding, becoming more unified as a team through working together in a team effort to perform these tasks? I realized, well, really it's when we do things together. Suffering together, maybe it has some merit, but it's worth it. I didn't think so. So it begins building the team and develops that muscle memory that allows for that dialogue. So the online training, in spite of the knowledge checks, it's still very directed at you. You don't really have a chance to ask questions, and we'll talk about that more later too. It takes 10 to 13 hours in class. Again, 13 with all the optionals, plus the time for the final disaster exercise.
So I took CERT 10 years ago, and that's the before the hybrid program. And not counting the Saturday mock exercise, it took about 12 hours. And now
Okay.
it still takes 12 hours, I'm not quite sure.
All right, so
It seems like it takes twice as long now.
I've not attended your program. I don't know what it's like, but hearing that it took 12 hours for the whole program, my first thought is, well, it was skipped. Because there was a lot. There was a lot that was skipped, likely. I don't know any way around that. There's no way that could have included all the curriculum in 12 hours in class. So in that respect, this might look like now it's twice as long. But this is how the state wants you to run the hybrid program, if you run the hybrid program well.
So when I first started CERT way back in the dark ages, we did 6 weeks, not including the disaster. So we did, and they were 2.5 or 3 hours a night. So that was a lot of time invested. Then we cut it down and cut it down and we cut it down, and now we're using the hybrid.
Yeah. So, again, my experience, I added too many slides when I was the training coordinator. So ours was probably longer than it needed to be, for sure. But go through your checklist, make sure that you have everything on that as an exercise you're going to do in class. And you need to estimate how much time you're going to spend on that. This isn't part of Train the Trainer, but this is how I like teaching new teachers about how to handle the classroom instruction. It's kind of stolen from Boy Scouts training, trainer believer training, at the EDGE method, where you explain, you demonstrate, you guide, and then you enable. So you can break down the teaching process and how the online kind of meshes with the in-class through this process. So explain gives a background on what the task is, why it's needed, concepts, how it fits into the CERT response, the exact processes, and for the most part, our online training takes care of that. It demonstrates, it explains it very well. For the most part, it takes care of that. Now, we'd like to hope that in class, this is still fresh in their mind. Ideally, it will be, but understand too that as an instructor, sometimes you're gonna have to play catch up quick with some people who are behind. Just like in a school class, there are some students who are just right on the ball and they have all the answers, and others who are a little behind, and you need to try to capture all that. That's difficult. It takes time. Demonstrate techniques and principles in action. Now, the online training has a lot of videos, it's a lot of demonstration, but it's kind of different when you're actually in a classroom. Because have you ever seen any of these techniques demonstrated with equipment your team doesn't have? So there's something to be said for training according to what your team uses and offers. So in other words, demonstrate. It might be taken care of partly in the online, but also in the classroom, you can also kind of refresh that quickly. Where are we? This, oh yeah, online training videos should be done before each hands-on activity. So as an instructor, as much as we want to say, okay, you've done the online training, we're just going to jump into splinting some limbs here now. In the real world, we need to review really quickly what the principles are, maybe show what the materials are that we're going to be using, and then demonstrate with, my preference is another instructor, because they're already well familiar with the techniques, but demonstrate each of those things, and then we have them perform. But we also don't just cut them loose. So the guide step is helping them through the first attempt. They might feel a little lost or overwhelmed, they might have forgotten what they learned online. A lot of things can come into play. You can give them additional tips, customized guidance, because you might see them struggling with a particular aspect that maybe the online training didn't touch on. And then this is where the instructor or coach, and we'll talk more about coaches soon, that's where they act more as an observer. The student does it on their own, and you step back as instructor, and you watch them, and you step in only if they get really stuck. Is that a hand raised? Sorry. Okay. There we go. And this is the checklist. This is what each of you should have in your packets. There's actually 2 checklists. So when you go to the, at the end of the program guide, you'll see a link for the hybrid toolkit. You go there, you'll find there are 2 different checklists. At first glance, they look the same. They look almost identical. And for the most part, they are. But this is the instructor checklist. We'll go into some detail about what this is and how you can use it. Each skill has a number. And the student version has the same number describing or labeling the same skill. So when, as an instructor, you go down the checklist and you say, we're gonna do item number 26 now. The student on their checklist will go to it and they'll see the same thing. Item 26, they'll see the description. They're not going to see page references for the most part to the instructor guide. They're gonna see page references for the participant manual. In the program guide, they say in class, when you're doing this, when you're taking care of one of these tasks, you can tell the student to turn to that page in their participant manual so they can follow along. In practice, that is extremely slow. First, we're not handing out, at least in our teams, we're not handing out hard copies anymore. So we're talking about people accessing things online. And trying to find a page number online while, and then read when it's stuff that they should have already taken online. That does slow things down considerably. So since the hybrid program, since we've adopted the hybrid program, I have not asked people to turn to the participant manual any time. If they want to deep dive, great, they can do it on their own time. So this is the item number, the skill number. A lot of information right here. This is the unit number 3. So when you see page 14 in the participant manual, you know that, oh, that's unit 3, that's first aid, or disaster method 1. Asterisk, oh, that's a little red flag for me. That's saying there's some prep required for this exercise. You gotta gather some supplies together. And then S is just skill versus concept. So skill, something you'll actually be doing. C for concept, something you'll be talking about as a class. And then that's the estimate on the right, the estimate of how much time. Again, this is what you'll see on the instructor version of the checklist. Your mileage may vary, depending on how you want to do this. And I like how condensed these descriptions are because they don't tell you in detail how to do each of these exercises. They tell you what skill you need to pass off. As an instructor, as a training coordinator, as a program manager, it's up to you to decide how creative you want to be with this. You can just do it straightforward with no flash, or you can make a game out of it. And she had all sorts of ideas for games, and I just don't think that way, but it sounds so fun and engaging to do that, and engages the class and kind of build that unity thing. So this is what the student checklist looks like. Again, the numbers are identical to what you file in your instructor checklist. What they have up here is a slot for the instructor to initial and sign it off, and the date that it was signed off. It does not show whether it's considered a skill or concept, or whether prep was needed. Usually doesn't show the instructor guide pages, doesn't show the estimated time. So in practice, we tried, I think, if I remember right, once, handing these out to the students. Program guide says, hand these out to the students so they can check it off, they take it home with them. Any teachers in here who have sent things home with kids and asked them to return it the next day? No. Attrition was pretty bad. So what we've done is, actually let me back up a little bit. So what we've done in the past is kind of twofold. I have slides later, let me do this. Okay, we used the teacher checklist to mark off what we did on what night. We just have 1 or 2 people in staff marking this off. And then, don't break yet. Yeah, okay, so I'll show you a picture of it later, but just your class roster, whoever has signed in on that date, you know that if they were there that date, they completed these things, because you're not going to move on in class to the next exercise until you have that skill passed off for everyone. So as long as you know who was in the class on that date, you know what was passed off.
I know there's some people who just stand aside. They come, their spouse is coming, so they come, they don't want to really be involved. So if they've done it online and they're just observing, are we passing it off?
They're not passing it off.
Okay.
They need
Just
to
wanna
play
make
that
sure.
part. And there's ways to ensure that happens. And part of it is with a larger class, the normal approach is people are going to get lost in the shuffle. Absolutely. But the way the class breaks down, according to the hybrid program, it's really hard for anyone to slip by and just be passive. Now, there may be physical disabilities that factor in. Absolutely, we need to accommodate those. But for the most part, we're making sure that everyone performs each of these. This has been the source of a lot of misunderstanding, so I wanted to devote one whole slide to that. In the teacher checklist, it says, do this, perform splinting, describe. This isn't what you do, except for maybe the quick demonstration part. This isn't what you do, this is what the student does. So perform splinting, that's what the student needs to do. If you as an instructor demonstrate splinting, that's great. It doesn't check this off. What checks it off? Did that. Let's see, hybrid basics. Who can teach? Oh yeah. FEMA's instructions are that a program manager or an instructor should have train-the-trainer training behind them. Should have taken that. And then they're present in the classroom so that the train-the-trainer trained trainer can at least monitor what's being taught and how it's being taught. Can kind of keep things on the level, keep things on track. Train-the-trainer, though, has limited availability, and they understand that. Like, we have a train-the-trainer class coming up here in Utah County in a couple months. That doesn't happen very often. We don't have dates yet. They're being decided. So,
I talked to Kelly tonight, she said that they don't have dates, but people need to put April 27th as the first day.
nice.
Right after that, so that's what they're shooting for.
Sweet, that's great. Doesn't happen very often here, though, does it?
She made mention.
Yeah.
27.
She made mention of it, and so many people around here, so we're trying to bring it here, so that's awesome.
So in practice, it's hard to get only train-the-trainer trained trainers teaching in front of a class. But if we have a train-the-trainer trained trainer, we'll call them 5 Ts. If we have a 5T in class, helping train the instructors, the coaches, and monitoring the time, making sure things are moving along, then we're calling that good. And so that's one of the reasons that some of us who have been through train-the-trainer circulate among different programs, is just so we can be there, even if it's just as a fly on the wall. Coach, this is what, in a couple of programs I've worked in, that's what we started kind of calling these extra helpers. So anyone who's been CERT trained can come to class and help these groups that we separate into. So the idea behind this individualized or more improving the teacher-student ratio is to have the class divided up into groups of 4 to 6 mini groups, mini classes, with a coach or two working with each group through the exercises. And that way they have some really close-on instruction, close observation, a lot of good feedback, and it goes a lot faster. Because some exercises kind of have to go linearly. First you do it, then you do it, then you do it. If we did that for the whole class, it would take forever to get through some exercises. Break it up into smaller classes, you can get through those linear exercises a lot faster. And I think this is where we are now. What time is it?
It's 1900.
We're on schedule. Holy crap. Okay. 10 minutes.
You did this, so I did it.
On camera.
Oh. Shoot. Okay. Oh, so best practices. This is stuff not included in the program guide that's in your packet. These are things that we've experienced on our own implementing the program. Sometimes they don't agree with what's in the packet. So full disclaimer, we're not trying to contradict what's in the packet. We'll tell you what the packet says versus what in our experience worked and did not work. Like, prime example is that student checkoff sheet. It made it very clear, you send them home with the student and keeping them in class just means now you're tracking, 20 different individual sheets when you just track one and sync it up with the sign-in sheet, you're good. Anyway, so full disclosure, this is not endorsed by the state. This is not endorsed by any particular team. These are our experiences, and we've kind of compiled thoughts we've heard from various instructors, plus some things that, frankly, we want to try. And we haven't tried yet, but that make logical sense. So this is going to cover a lot of territory, but we'll see. Classroom setup, everyone's favorite thing. So during the old traditional program, I remember in Orem, it was great because I could afford to be sloppy. I didn't have to get everything out ahead of time because we had these long stretches of death by PowerPoints. And when that was happening, whoever was teaching, I and Joanna or whoever could go and rummage around in the closet and get stuff out and get it all ready for the next one. So we used the slide PowerPoint time as prep time. With this approach, do you think that's going to work? Not as well. So come early. Come early. Grab a couple of instructors to also come early. If you have certain members who want to help out with the team, but aren't comfortable teaching, that's a lot of it too. They can come and help do a lot of prep work. And they can absolutely contribute to the class going smoothly. So you can contribute to the education without necessarily standing up in front of the class. Yeah. Logistics and supplies coordinator. Springville has one. Woohoo, Catherine! She's formerly program manager, by the way. She didn't say that because she's very modest. But logistics and supplies coordinator, she knows the trailer inside and out. She knows that closet inside and out. She organized it in ways I could never have dreamed of. So every time I do something with that, I know I'm screwing stuff up for her, but she's a patient woman. She makes sure that things are back the way they should be. She tells me where everything is. I just have to ask her, and she tells me, no, that's on that cabinet, second shelf. Oh, thank you. So having, as far as leadership positions, if you're wanting to try to organize things in your team better, that is a great asset to have. And another thing, with volunteers, we can't pay them, right? And we'd probably have a lot more participation if pay was involved. But I tell other program managers is, you do pay volunteers, but you pay them one of three ways. You can pay them with appreciation, you pay them with recognition, and some you can pay with responsibility. For some people, that just rubs them the right way, being trusted with some responsibility. So some of these positions we talked about here, from coaches to logistics and supplies officers to training coordinators, these are all ways to keep people involved. From the registrations, estimate the number of students you have. And what we found out is, and we'll talk a little bit about capturing that number ahead of time, but what we found out is no matter how many people sign up, you will always have some attrition. There are some people who will not show up. That list on registration, that's a list of good intentions. And real life happens. So there's some attrition, and with CERT classes, not so much a class like this, but with CERT classes, a couple of walk-ins. Generally found that we don't have as many walk-ins as we have dropouts. So just keep that in mind, that when you have 20 people sign up, maybe plan on between 15 and 16 in a perfect scenario. So let's see, one coach for 6 students. The program guide suggests one coach per 6 students. If you can handle it, if you have enough staff to help out, make your group smaller because you can get through the exercises faster. Have more kind of one-on-one communication between the coaches and the students. Maximize the use of floor space. So this is the biggest difference between the new program, the old program for me, at least with classroom setup, is it's not a bunch of desks with chairs lined up behind them so people can take notes and open their binder. It's tables mostly out of the way for most of this. Chairs to sit down if you're tired, but really you need that space for all these exercises you're going to be doing. Portion out supplies for each group ahead of time. If you have that organization, if you have your checklist and your outline, your class outline all spelled out, you know exactly what you'll need. You have a table where each group is going to be. You can put those supplies out, and so you can just, boom, go from exercise to exercise without a lot of downtime. And also, use your students. Remember with triage, what can you do with greens, with people who have next to no injury or minor injuries? What can you do with them to help them become an asset and an emergency response? Put them to work. Your students are the same way. Your students are a bunch of greens. They can help you out. It may be that you guys come early to set up the classroom. Like if you have a captive audience once they're in class, you have them help you take down the classroom. You have them help you spread things out. Put this, roll bandages at the end of units 3 and 4. Oh my gosh, that's a huge help. In fact, during the exercises, have your groups re-roll the exercises for the next person. It shouldn't be on your shoulders. So this is hodgepodge. This is kind of the messy classroom that I really like. This is sort of modeled after Springville, but we moved the tables out of the way. We have chairs against the wall. We have groups separated, one coach per group. And this is a nice open area that allows the instructors and the coaches, if you have extra staff, just to walk around. Again, if you have staff that aren't comfortable teaching, they might be comfortable just coaching, or they might be comfortable just going from place to place, throwing out pointers. So it's kind of a more informal role that any staff member can take. This makes it really easy because you're not maneuvering around tables and things. Again, though, when you set up a room, mess things up like this, make sure you put it back the way you found it, so you don't, you want to maintain those relationships with the fire department, so they let us use their training room. So this is a way to capture, one of many ways to capture your student registrations, so you can plan your classroom accordingly. So sign up form, you can use Google Forms, I've done that. Eventbrite, it's kind of an online ticketing system. That's what we used for tonight. We had more people than show up than actually signed up, which is fine, because we told you, we're not going to turn you away. We just wanted to get an idea right for the demand. So this gives you a count, so up until that night, you have a rough idea of how many there's coming. This is just an example sign-in sheet or roster. It doesn't have to be this way. If you have students sign themselves in when they come to class, make it a really simple roster. Just their name, maybe their phone number. You'll have all this other information captured elsewhere, but don't have them mark off whether they're there or not. Don't have them mark off whether they finished the online training for that unit. This is something you need to do as a staff, because I think every one of us has probably seen forms and filled out that there's a gray area that says for office use only. And we are really diligent, I'm sure, in this classroom. We don't ever fill those things out. We don't ever do that. But in real life, people put stuff there. And in a roster where people sign themselves in, we don't know if there's a scribble or a check mark. We have no idea who checked it off. So if you can kind of control that side of things, make a simple roster sign in for the students, and then have hopefully someone dedicated at that sign-in desk to keep things straight. That's a super important role. So here's just like, this is what a spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets. It's a great way to track. And anytime you want to track something additional, all you have to do is add another column. You know, it's great, like background checks, you know, did they get their certificate? Did they get their ID badge printed? Did they get their ID photos taken? You can just add that up. It's nice and versatile, and you can share it easily. A teaching timeline, I'll show you one of those. Binders and packets. You want to limit the handouts, because most of this stuff, again, is online. Most of the handouts you want to give people, most of it is information that's already findable elsewhere. However, it's also great having one handout at least, you know, with some links that they can go to for some more direct education. So.
Can I ask you a question? I'm sorry, I'm an old school book person. They are currently out of print. Does anybody have any instructor guides that they don't need or want? Because we'll take them.
How many do you need?
How many do we need? I need at least 3.
Anything that's available on PDF is in print.
It's not in print.
You can make it in print.
Yeah, I'm not.
Through FEMA,
This
they're
is
for
4
free.
minutes. Yeah.
What's that, Joanna? FEMA, these used to give
Yeah.
them for free.
Yeah.
They have been
With,
available for a
that was
while.
something we didn't cover here, but that I heard with the new curriculum rollout, is that they were scaling back in a huge way, providing print copies of anything.
Yeah.
Even though they still say, oh, for free copies, just
Yeah, go
order them
FEMA.
from here. I've heard of some people getting them, other people it's just nothing.
There's nothing in print right now for
So.
instructor manuals.
I don't know how many I have.
So there's all sorts of copy shops around here that'll happily print it out for you.
For a pretty penny that I don't count.
If you print 2 up, like pages, you know, 2 pages per page, so it's kind of smaller, you can save some money. Yeah.
But not saving my eyes.
So in class, as your master checklist for what you completed on what day, the student checkoff list is actually pretty nicely done for that, because you have 2 blank columns on the right. for the
Where
day.
is this form?
This,
The
this
checklist
form,
form?
if you go to on your packet,
Yeah, I know, it's on the packet. Where can I find a PDF?
PDF. So you go to, wow,
I just
okay.
Googled CERT skills checklist.
So you go to onlinecert.org. That's probably your most important link for all of this. Onlinecert.org.
Okay.
That's where you go for your online training.
Yeah.
onlinecert.org. They have all the training materials, all the administrative materials, all sorts of ideas and FAQs and tips and forms. So they will have that student version here, and then the instructor version also as a checklist for you to download. Dr. already talked about syncing. Importantly, keep notes after each of these classes, especially if it's something new that you're implementing. You'll find out some things work, some things don't. The programs that I've been a part of reached the point where they were through iterative improvement. You know, after classes, we talked about what worked, what didn't, what we wish we would have done differently. At the end of each class cycle, we say, did the dates work out? You know, did we have some conflicts we should have anticipated? And we take that, it's kind of like a debrief, like after a disaster exercise. We use that to improve the program for the next step. But for that continuity of information, you want to be capturing those in a location where leadership will continually have access. And that's one of the reasons I keep pushing just a Google account that's just for the team and have that persistently, carried throughout any leadership changes. So yeah, keep notes, that's how you get better. And especially after each disaster exercise, man, we have so many ideas. And this last time went really well down in Springville. We combined the Lindon and Spanish Fork and Mapleton. We got there because of lessons learned in the past. So when you break into groups in the hybrid program, in class, think of those as little mini classes. And if it's done right, then even a large class is not going to take that significant amount more time to carry out, because you're having these mini classes of 6 or 4 spaced out throughout. You have an instructor who's maybe introducing the exercise, maybe throw a slide up there showing you what to review, and then it's up to the groups to separate. As far as like building unity, teamwork, one of the things you can do when these groups separate is you can have them come up with their own team names. And it might be that every class you hold, it's a different assortment of people on each group. And they come up with their own team names, but it's kind of fun. Give them something to vote on. And it kind of gives you a little clue on who the leaders are. Because anytime there's a discussion or exchange or a team effort, you can kind of see you can see who takes the initiative. Now also tell who are the effective communicators are. Not necessarily the people who are the loudest, right? Okay. Breaking into groups, bring the groups together in the middle for large team efforts. If you have a group of 4 or 6, you can do a mega mover or a backboard exercise, sure. A team of 4, or in some of our classes, if we have a lot of staff helping, we might have little groups of 2 or 3. We can't do that on our own, so that's when we come together as a whole group. The time we most often do that is cribbing. Cribbing, I swear that's the most, there we go, cribbing, in case you can't see that. I swear that's the most dangerous thing we do in training. So it's all hands on deck, and you can't have too many people practically. So being able to come together as a group is a huge thing. If you can, leave Q&A for the end. Something Catherine would like doing that I keep wanting to be better about is putting a post-it note on everyone's desk or everyone's chair and telling them, if you have a question during today's class, write it down and stick it up here on the whiteboard. Then during breaks, staff would go over, look at the questions, and we would be able to answer really quickly next time the class convened. Someone asked about this is the answer. Someone asked about this, that's the answer. That way it doesn't get dragged down into a very slow, time-consuming conversation. Respect the time. War stories, oh, that's a killer. War stories, oh man. There's nothing more entertaining than war stories. And there's nothing that'll suck time away from a class like war stories. It's easiest just to say no war stories, but if you can say something, if you're gonna bring some experience into play, make it short as in seconds short. Like, let's see, last firefighting exercise, we didn't have a way to light the burn pan, so we had to borrow a road flare. Oh, that was a long story. It may have been illustrating some important point, maybe not, but that's how short you keep it. You don't give, this was in one program where I was about 5 years ago, and these were the people who were there, and this was my position at the time, and this is what we were trying to teach. And oh, we had one extinguisher that didn't work, no, so you go down the rabbit hole. So you can take hours telling more stories, but just avoid, unless you have a surplus of time, great. But that way, if you have kind of a time tracker for your class, you'll know when you're ahead of the schedule, and you know when you have time for the lecture, things like that. Oh, another little thing here. Yeah, see that little arrow. So what we found too is that in rooms, especially something like this one, where there's hard floor, hard walls, hard ceiling, there's a lot of echo, and noise carries really well, or really badly, depending on how you look at it, but noise carries. And if we had, say, 4 groups in each corner, and I've seen this in church too, when we have separate groups in the discussions, which I hate that. But when the discussion leader is facing the corner, away from the rest of the groups, it's way quieter than when they're facing in, and everyone's competing with the noise. So just a little tip, if you're going to be a coach with a team, try to have your back to the rest of the class and be focusing on the team and not trying to share your wisdom with the whole class. Slideshow. This is something that Angie has been talking with me a lot about, how with the hybrid program, because we're focused on the doing so much, we've really gotten away from using slides. And that can be a good or a bad thing. But it's been a while since I've used slides in the classroom. And she's made a very good point, and that's why we're including it here. So sometimes it's great having that as a background. We don't know how long ago someone took the online training. We may not know how good our demonstration was when we're demonstrating for them. So having something in the background, like we're splinting, but maybe a better graphic than this. Having something in the background so that during the splinting exercise, they can refer to that and say, oh yeah, that's how you do an ankle, that's how you do a finger splint, that's how you do an arm swath and sling. Yeah, so you can use that. Picture's worth 1,000 words. Don't dwell on it. Say, this is what we're going to do now, demonstrate it, then break up into teams, groups, and then you can go through it. So it's a great guide, and like you're seeing here, what we're doing tonight with slides that say our names, or introducing the big section topics, it kind of helps keep us on track. It tells us what big section we're starting, who's doing it, how much time we expect it to take.
Has anyone made a set of slides that go through hands-on? Like that?
Well, the slides that FEMA has out there now, you can take that and pare it down a bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Are
Yeah.
interns gonna do that, or
So-
someone done it already?
Well, maybe we have something we could share a link for, but because we've taken slideshows that we've had before with the traditional program. Again, like I went 2 crazy for that slides, but we pulled out a lot of the slides, leaving a few key slides, and that's what we're going to work on. A version of that is what we're going to be working on in Lindon this next time. Just a pared down version. And this is an experiment, so.
Totally be interested in it.
Yeah, Lindon will have a smaller slide deck for each.
So it does mean a little bit more logistical prep, right? Laptop, projector, screen, or nice white wall. But yeah, so I think it's useful. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater necessarily. Might still get a lot of use out of these slides as a guide. And as a, you are here kind of thing, a check.
Right.
Yes.
So if there's no slideshow for us to like click a link on, where can we find sources for these?
On the FEMA site, for FEMA materials, if you go to that site on your packet, they have the slideshows. I believe they have
FEMA or the training
the FEMA traditional CERT basic training. There's a lot of links. And the FEMA site, just word of caution, that's the link I gave you. There's all sorts of CERT pages around FEMA site, and some look like they're trying to be comprehensive, and some don't, and some even don't say the name of it right, like call it Citizen Emergency Response Team. It's stuff that's kind of long in the tooth. Some of it is really current. That one looked like the most current, the most comprehensive. That's why I gave you that link. So the slides, it's easier to find PDFs in the slideshow than the PowerPoint. PDFs aren't very useful as a slideshow tool, but you can use them. I've used them just to screen grab it, paste it into Google Slides, and presto, that's my slide.
Do you find it easier to use like a PowerPoint type of thing, or is it better just to have like, open this PDF, then open this PDF?
Oh, better, so she's asking better PowerPoint versus opening different PDFs. Maybe it depends on the situation, like for
Depends on
class.
how you want to teach it then?
Yeah,
Okay.
for class, I found it hugely useful to have everything directed through slides. So the instructors aren't referring to a guide. They're not even referring to a separate time outline. They're not flipping up a PDF. They're not opening a binder. They're just looking through the slides. That way they're focusing their attention on where they want the students paying attention also.
There is a hybrid CERT presentation out there, but it is still really, really long and a lot of slides. So for Lindon, I've taken out just key slides and kind of built a smaller slide deck. But there is a hybrid deck out there. It's just still a lot.
So the basic instructor guide is go make your own like slides, present it however you want to, here's your resources, you can choose from there.
The instructor guide covers traditional CERT. It doesn't cover hybrid CERT. So it has the full slideshow. You can find the full slideshow online for traditional CERT. And it's from that you want to probably pair things out if you're going to do the hybrid program. If you're going to use these in
So
class.
are they asking us to teach hybrid or to teach traditional?
This is for hybrid.
They're asking you to teach however your program wants to.
Yeah, I think it's up to your city.
Yeah.
So, okay. Around here, we're doing hybrid, right?
Well, most places around here, I think, are. All right, teaching timeline. You can have as much detail as you want to, but I like this kind of approach where it's kind of a simplified, again, this is more work, but it's kind of a simplified version of your checkoff sheet where you have the skill number, very short description. Again, if you're familiar with the checkoff sheet and with instructor guidelines, you know what airway tripod means. You don't need the paragraph description. You know what airway recovery means. You don't need the full paragraph. Then you have the instructor name. Marie, sorry, I signed you up without asking.
Thanks.
Okay. And ditto. So start time and total time. These are key because as you're going through the class, if it's 7:35 and you're only getting here, you realize you're 5 minutes behind at that time. It's not at the end of class that you realize, oh man, we're half an hour behind schedule. So the more little time milestones you have throughout, the more of a handle you can keep on how class is going. Use a teaching timeline as a guide. Insert slides, we talked about that. So switching between skills takes time. This is something I personally want to develop a lot more, and we did this in spades in Springville in our 5th class when we did it, what we call the mini mock. But it's combining different tasks into one flow. We're practicing all these little discrete tasks, and too often in CERT, we don't tie those together until, boom, final disaster exercise, and it's overwhelming. You see the fear in their eyes. You see them hyperventilating. You see them saying, I don't want anything more to do with CERT. We've heard that before. Because it's just so overwhelming and stressful. So we want to set them up to succeed. We don't want to set them up to fail. We don't want them to feel freaked out. At some level, frankly, it's a little satisfying watching people freak out, but I don't think it's good for their long-term learning. So, like this example, putting these together. Airway. You can demonstrate to the students the 3 methods of airway recovery, and then you separate it out. And you do that instead of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So putting it into one kind of a response flow, like someone is breathing, what do? Do the 3 methods. You take care of 3 of those items, boom, boom, boom. And you can even do that a little more complex, like this one. The skills you put together, they don't have to be adjacent to each other on the checklist. These are skills that can be checked off in any order. So this one is like in Unit 3, demonstrate how to approach a patient. In Unit 4, demonstrate how to assess with PMS, which, yeah, good words now. So perform head-to-toe assessment, and then demonstrate how to administer an EpiPen. So you could put that as a scenario that you're coming across a patient, a survivor, who's having difficulty breathing. And you might try those airway recovery methods, but also you could just say, demonstrate how to approach them, how to start communicating with them, find out what's wrong. Find find out that, oh, they have an EpiPen, I'm having a hard time reading, they gasp that out first thing, and take care of that. So it's kind of a scenario that involves all these things integrated, which is more realistic. And it might be absorbed, internalized a bit more, Donna?
Are certs allowed to do EpiPens?
EpiPens,
It's on your list, so I
Yes.
was wondering.
Yes, and that's one of the very few exceptions
And
to
the Narcan,
administering.
too.
Yeah. And that's something we'd like to train in
Yeah.
Lindon at least.
Yeah, Narcan is not mentioned anywhere in a checkoff or anywhere, but we're going to combine it with when we teach the EpiPen because, we shouldn't administer an EpiPen. We should let them administer it if they can, but you can administer Narcan.
Right. That's what I was going to say. We don't want people jabbing other people with EpiPens, but you could say, if I were in your situation, I'd use an EpiPen. I have.
Most likely, if there's somebody that needs an EpiPen, they know that and they would have it.
Yeah, the direction in the CERT guidance now is you help them administer their own EpiPen, you don't carry one in your pack
Right.
for that kind of emergency.
Well, and unless
It's
it's,
a prescription.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
In most cases, doctors, you tell them you're part of CERT or TERT or whatever, they'll get you one. I've been told that.
I haven't had any luck with that, but that's good to try.
Yeah.
Another thing, combo task, we talked about having a slide as a background to the task, as a reminder. If you're gonna do a combo approach for a task, you might want one slide that has each of those things represented, because everyone's gonna be at a different phase in this combo response, and you don't know which slide you want to be showing them. So try to come up with one slide that you have on the screen while people are doing that combination. Class 1 is the weird one. Class 1 is this outlier. The first class is the weirdest one because even in the hybrid program, we have to do things differently than the way we want to do. Class 1 program guide says, yeah, every one of your students should have that online training done. And that's rarely the case. So if that's not the case, now what do you do? Do you kick them out? Do you say, come back in the fall? Odds are really good that the one time that they register for class is the only time that they would register for the class. And so telling them to come back, you might be losing that person. Yeah, so how do you accommodate that? It's a tough one. First class, we went to it usually assuming that no one is taking the online training. Even though at registration, we've given them the link, told them generally, oops, let's see, where am I? Thank you, sorry.
Okay, that's the thing that's confused me about the hybrid program. So before, they have to do all of the online, like the entire thing before they even start?
That's
like
the-
the first unit?
That's the hybrid program's recommendation. In practice, we've seen that not really work.
So they can't just do like what you're gonna learn in hands-on that week or?
That's usually where it ends up going. Is first week, we introduce CERT organization, we introduce community and personal family preparedness, and we introduce that online training and how that works and how important it is for them to take care of units 1 through 4 before the next class. 1 and 2, because if we're teaching that today, and 3 and 4 for the next class. So, and it depends on you. It depends on your program, how you want to police that.
Ideally, they have taken the whole thing before you start, and so encourage that and through like just repetitive reminders in advance. But then, like Mike said, after each class, end it with make sure you have next classes online complete before class.
So have you found that it actually does help them learn better if they take the entire course before they start at all?
Oh, ideally, yeah.
It does.
Because things combine and work together, even though we break them out as a checklist. But to have the whole course done before is
So I'm going to have a dissenting opinion just to test us and make sure that we're thinking locally. Has it been tested locally, or are we just assuming? Because when I've taught people in the past and they wait 6 weeks after hearing something to practice it, it's not fresh on their mind. So to me, I would much rather, like if I'm teaching a class, I'm going to actually not suggest that you do everything all up front. I'd much rather read it this week, let's practice it where it's fresh in your mind. But I don't know if it's been tested locally by anybody to.
We haven't done
to see what
any
that's
A/B
like.
testing like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I tell you, if you give that link for online training ahead of time, explain this important at registration.
Yeah.
And if your first class, you get a student that comes up to you with their certificate printed out, saying, look what I did, that's one of your leaders for the rest of the class.
Yeah.
They are on the ball.
Agreed.
So, okay. It'll have the most discussion handouts, slides, and note-taking. So first class, we often have tables, some mechanism, clipboard, something for them to write on, because they'll be having maybe some handout packets. And it's mostly discussion and team discussions where they maybe gather around a table for like a tower building activity.
Sorry, can I ask you a question while we're doing this little thing here? I'm not sure I'm reading it right. The number, is that the skill number?
Yes.
Okay, and these little sections, is that the class?
That's
Is
the,
that
oh,
chapter?
the,
Chapter?
talking about the chapter, the numbers, so we have a 2,
No, I mean,
3.
like we got these
That
goals.
very first piece is different because it's a general piece, like it talks about the disaster, I think, exercise. But
What does this
second
folded
column,
section-
the second column should tell you the number of the unit. It's associated with that.
So, what did you?
Mike,
Yes.
we can also reference, we have access to these slides, yes?
Yes.
So-
Well, we will add that link. In fact, the link is there. Yeah, you should have.
In the Google Drive, right? So if they wanted to go back, anybody could go back to the slides to reference to any of this stuff.
Yep.
Then you'll be able to do that.
Yep. So don't worry about some of the details. In that first class, you might be tempted to cover everything in units 1 and 2 like you're teaching it from scratch the traditional way. Understand, for them to complete the CERT program, they're going to have to take this online. So understand that at some point, they're going to be learning all of that. They're going to be seeing online learning for all of that information. So focus on what things you need to check off for units 1 and 2, and provide some context for them that they'll otherwise be lacking because they maybe haven't taken that online training. Again, and modified units 1 and 2, that's probably those are probably the units you'll be modifying the most for your local program. Triage is something in Unit 3 you'll be doing for your local program, custom stuff probably. But 1 and 2, what are your local disaster risks? What's your local response method for your team? Things like that. So communication, one of the things that's lacking, again, from the traditional approach versus the hybrid is that, again, we're not suffering together, but we're also maybe so worried about getting through stuff in class that maybe we're not just relaxing and having a lot of conversations we might have in the old method. So what we, at least on the Springville side, and what we did in Orem as well, Provo was, we wanted to foster communication in the class. So once they're registered, you can sign them up to a class Telegram group or chat. Once they're registered for class, if they come to class or they're walk-ins, we add them later. But this way, there's 24/7 conversation about things that they're learning. So people who are going through the online, there's not really a mechanism in the online for this two-way communication, but we can provide that for them, right, some separate way. So they can ask questions. Staff is all members of the same chat, and so they ask questions. Any staff member, like Stephen, he's up late at night because he works nights, so he's a night responder. Then we have day responders. So anytime anyone asks a question, they'll get some kind of response. It's kind of cool. People share files, they share photos. It's a great record. And then when they graduate, we archive that as a file and move those names over to the team chat, the regular team chat. So that's part of their adoption into the full team.
Novice at this, so I'm gonna ask a stupid question. What chat program are you using? What
Chat.
chat program are you using?
This particular is Telegram. Lindon is going to be using GroupMe.
Okay.
Whatever your program settles on.
Is that the registration also, or is the registration on the online.org?
Registration we just do either through Google Form or through Eventbrite or.
So you can create whatever is necessary that you're doing a class. The class is doing this hybrid, and the hybrid is a combination of the online and the hands-on. But this is the option that you have, which is the questions in between as they progress through the online.
Yeah, in fact, this particular chat group, I meant to archive this. I told people at the bottom of this chat, I'm archiving this week, no matter what, it's not
Like
archived
12
yet.
times.
Yeah, because there's a lot of good info, and I was kind of reluctant just to wipe it out.
So who can administrate the whoever
Who do you
creates
want?
it, or you can just choose whoever.
Who do you want? So one of the reasons I went with Telegram usually is you have really granular control over admin privileges. So you can have all sorts of different types of admins. You can block people. You can give them rights to change the image, to change the name.
So not just anybody can add something.
Not just anybody. So you have one person who creates it, then they can decide to assign administrators to help manage it. That helps especially with the Utah County chat. Some people there sometimes create drama. And, so, yeah, right? So it's great being able to delete comments or temporarily block someone without them getting too huffy about it. But yeah, so that's one of the reasons we went with that. But most group chat applications like GroupMe, they're starting to have just these full features too. So that it's like, well, whatever you want to. Whatever you want to. I think that 10 minutes to go? Okay, 10 minutes over.
10 minutes to go.
Okay.
It's 10-minute warning.
Right. Phone text list, again, one of the reasons we went with a group chat was, have you ever managed a group just through phone text?
Oh.
And when someone wants to be removed or
add.
added, oh my gosh.
You have to start
2020 is a great war story. 2020, earthquake. I was working in the Red Cross EOC. We communicated through phone text lists. All we saw were phone numbers. And because it was all volunteer, people are leaving, going and coming, transferring. It was a mess. We never knew who was saying what. But if we had something like this, it would have been real simple. Real simple and straightforward. So on the Springville side, we're wanting to use this as even communication during a response. So during a response, we say, okay, while we're doing this actual response, this is going to be not a chat channel. This is going to be for business. And then once the response is done, we'll go back to chatting as usual.
Also, before you create one, please take it up with your emergency manager that you have. They are to be involved usually in what we do, so have them approved.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just like with any social media, you want that approval from your sponsoring order.
Do you use those social media apps for call-outs?
Actually, yes, Firefighter we have. We're using that for call-outs. We're also using Everbridge
We
though.
have GroupMe and some of our leaders don't like that because they say, who can do this? And people are responding, well, I can't because I'm going, my grandson's play. It just gets overwhelming.
It gets too much. So talk to Joanna after class. In Springville, what we're doing for the initial call-out, we're doing Everbridge call-outs. It's an automated response, so you just write yes or no, and then they can decide on the Telegram chat, okay, these two people responded, nothing more is needed. So anyway, talk to her about how she implemented that. I think it's a nice workable solution. Team development, I'm actually going to skip this one, but just generally, I think the more your team communicates, the faster you work through this team development process. And I think the hybrid program is ideal for this.
It's edge in the old scouting format, that's what that is.
It's Boy Scouts, yeah. Yeah, great, I think it's a great guide. The most important guides you have, and if you want to be certified in Hybrid Train the Trainer, which is an 8-hour webinar course, Angie and I passed it. If you want to be certified that, this is one of the questions you'll be asked. What two things are the most important? What two materials are most important for you to implement your Hybrid CERT program? It's the Hybrid CERT program guide in your packet, and the Hybrid Skills Checklist also in the packet. Everything else you can find online. Also, these other once you get on those links, especially the onlinecert.org links, go under instructors and managers. Oh my gosh, there's so many links there. You could waste a lot of time.
So you mentioned train the trainer for hybrid. Is there a different train the trainer?
Yeah, so the Train the Trainer is coming up here in Utah County in April, I hope, is the traditional Train the Trainer for the traditional class. Everything in class. That's been, what was that?
3 nights, 3 hours a day.
3 nights. Okay, so that's not,
Why aren't they doing the hybrid?
well, the hybrid program is endorsed by FEMA, not made by FEMA, so the official Train the Trainer program, the main one, is FEMA and is the traditional CERT approach. So hybrid program was developed by Utah Be Ready and by University of Utah in concert. I helped with the first version, I wasn't an administrator, but I did the language edits for the whole thing. So it was interesting watching that develop and watching them kind of go through the manual and finding some contradictions and things that needed fixed at the FEMA level. But the hybrid program, the trainer that they put together for hybrid was a series of videos put together by the U of U and by Utah, by Utah's Office of Emergency Management.
So what's your recommendation if we're doing hybrid training, do we take the 3-day trainer?
So the state requirement for teaching is that you have a train the trainer, a FEMA train the trainer, trained trainer, the 5 team, in class. The hybrid is a nice to have. So in order to go by state guidelines, I would say absolutely do the traditional train the trainer.
It's
But also
amusing
on
that the state guidelines are the traditional, even though our state developed the hybrid, that's just
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they're working on acceptance. Like this program, hybrid program, was accepted last count, I think 40 out of the 50 states. So they're still working on developing adoption, kind of pushing adoption across the country. So I think there might be at some level that a hybrid train-the-trainer course will be kind of accepted as a more mainstream. I got a lot of use out of the train-the-trainer for hybrid, but I've also taken the classroom train-the-trainer. The traditional train-the-trainer goes into a lot of detail about classroom management and how to work with students, how to work with them through teachbacks, developing instructor skills, where I think the train-the-trainer for hybrid is kind of more like an add-on to that. I got use out of both of them.
So it seemed like the requirement is to have a trainer person in class, there would be more opportunity to train the trainers.
Yeah. So if you wanted to teach, this is going to be complicated, guys. If you want to teach, train the trainer, you need to have program manager training. You need to have train the trainer, the traditional training done. You need to have the endorsement,
Through the FEMA, right?
Yeah. You need to have the endorsement of your local sponsoring organization or your emergency manager, a couple of other things. So in that case, a hybrid trainer isn't going to fly necessarily, but for what we're doing, for where I am and where Angie is, I think we're getting probably more use out of that in particular, but we've also had trainer background. Let's see, and make sure that it's make sure it's the 2019 or later version. So any of these materials, whether you have the instructor guide or the participant manual, look on the footer. It should say 2019 edition. So officially the printing date is 2019. It didn't roll out until January or February 2020. But 2019 is what's the current. So if you have 2012 or 2011, it's outdated. You need to get something to work. So make sure you have the 2019 dates. Again, most things available online, cert.org. You'll also find certificate examples. Their certificate design for graduating is horrid. Please don't use their certificate design. Instructions on implementing the program, links to hybrid trainer, social media ideas, FAQs, flyers, flyer templates you can use, agendas, and they even give you an email address where you can email the people who actually put this together. I've had mixed response sending us this email. I've usually emailed the people who actually built it directly because they know me, but at least that's the official, and I'm not going to give you the other email addresses. So, these links are in your packet, but for traditional CERT, this is where you go. For the U of U or the hybrid CERT, this is where you go. And for this, if you go here, it'll link you to a Google Doc that contains links to all these places, including links to this slideshow. So through feedback and some of the discussions and questions you had, we'll probably be tweaking the slideshow a bit. But so if you check it in a week, it might look a little different than you saw tonight. But this is planned to be a one-and-done class. I'm not going to be doing this again, but hopefully it's still recording. Is it recording, Angie? You did time out.
If it's looking at the slide, it's timed out. I didn't pay attention.
Oh, it's still going.
Okay.
And now that's recorded. Great. But as soon as we get the YouTube channel for Lindon sorted, we're going to be putting these videos up there, and that link will be on that document that we're linking to here. We said silence your phones, we didn't mean to throw them on the floor. Do we have a couple minutes left, Angie?
It's 7:59.
Oh,
I have 1 minute.
Very impressive.
And Mike's gonna answer most of the questions anyways. So does anybody have any questions on the hybrid program or on their program in particular, or anything that any questions that you wanna ask the expert?
This is my first exposure to this group as a whole, knowing that there are other CERT programs going on. Is there an overarching coordinating group that organized this meeting? Or is this just something you did and you invited everybody and they show up because they're wanting to, move their programs forward? Or do we coordinate, or are we making recommendations to do it one way or the other? I mean,
So,
is there some overall vision of
working
where
with
you want to be?
Mike, I've worked with Mike a long time. I worked with him through Orem City, Provo City, and now with Springville. The reason it was important for me to kind of do something like this and gather us all together is because as Lindon City, we have joined with Springville and Spanish Fork for mocks and for other things, and it's really helped our program be a strong program and helped it grow. So if we are all on the same page and we're all teaching a program very similar, to answer your question earlier, if someone misses a class, I can now say, you missed Unit 3, and you've got to have that to graduate, but Springville has Unit 3 coming up, and you can join Springville's
Is there someone
class.
coordinating that? Because right now, American Fork's running the traditional training.
So we just have joined together as program managers and said, let's help each other out.
And so it's a handshake and an email.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's nothing
You're in
formal?
the club.
You're in the club now.
Are you in the club?
You're in.
And now you're in the club, and that's why we wanted to have.
Am I a volunteer or am I a member?
You're on
But
a list.
that's,
I'm on my,
You're a survivor.
I'm a survivor.
Assignment?
Huh? I think I got plenty of assignments.
But that's kind of the reason why we wanted to pull everybody together, and we invited everybody to join. And it's not just a Lindon thing or a Springville thing. We wanted everybody that wanted to be included to be involved in this, so that we can all help each other out. We're all touching cities in some way. We're all neighbors, so now we can help each other out with our programs and just build a strong program throughout the county rather than just our own city.
So then I ask the follow-on question. Are you recommending the hybrid system or the traditional?
So-
Mike is very, very political in saying, do what you
We in
decide.
Lindon are going to do the hybrid program. Your emergency manager and program manager will work together to decide what you're gonna do in your city.
I'm the program manager.
So you would work with your emergency manager
Okay.
and then you guys would decide what program you're going to do. In the actual program, it suggests that somewhere along the line, occasionally you teach a traditional program for those people in your community that don't have access to doing online or something like that. That would be something completely up to you and your emergency manager if you wanted to do that. But here in Lindon, we teach a spring cycle and a fall cycle of hybrid.
For smaller programs, I'd recommend the hybrid because it's a lower resource load. It's easier to get commitment from instructors for 4 weeks than 8 weeks. And time-wise, I just felt like it's a more efficient use of limited resources. But larger programs, I think, can more comfortably do the traditional way.
And then also as a joining with cities, like we've joined with Spanish Fork and Springville, it really is beneficial for our mock. That's where I really love that we join together, is for our mock, because it brings in additional teachers and resources, and we've worked really well together, but it's also increased the amount of people going through the mock. And part of it is working with other people that maybe you don't know, but have had the same training. So I have a course, they have a course, our people are coming together and, you know, meeting new people that have just done CERT. And it's showing that even though you didn't train at the same place, your training is the same and you're working together.
And that kind of response might be more realistic too, is it's quite possible, like for sandbagging or whatever, that CERT's in the valley, every team is contacted, and you'll be working with people who have partaken of the same standardized training, but are strangers to you. So it's a good practice.
I'm sorry, I can dominate. No.
Go ahead.
Related to onboarding new members, who makes your badges? Who does your background checks?
Batches?
There's gonna be no stinking badges.
I don't have it. So for Springfield City, it's our city, HR.
And background checks.
And background. City.
You're a 501 C3?
Yes.
C3PO.
Are
Yeah.
background checks required now?
Our city is.
It depends on your program.
It's for our rehab team that we have a background check.
For liability protection, it's probably a good idea, but it's not a requirement for FEMA.
A background check is if there's a lost child and they do background checks on anybody doing searching. If you've already had a background check and can prove that, then that can expedite the.
So as a cert member,
Makes
it's
sense.
a good idea to
But
have
our
a
cities,
background check.
our cities recently
It's-
declined to make background checks or badges,
So for the CERT program, it's not required. I have had them through CERT before that they have done a background check, but that would be up to your emergency manager and your program manager if you're going to do that.
I'm just full of questions.
Yes?
No?
A drill, typically when you put a mock on or something like that, it is one team going in and then doing it again. If you have another team showing up from, say, American Fort, and they want to go through it too, how would you do that?
We join together as all one group. We're no longer one group or one
So it
city.
is only one team going through as more people.
Yes.
Yeah, one incident command, you're dividing everybody off into groups, not just by your city.
Okay.
They're all gonna work together.
So for the county level, because there's not a lot happening, not a lot of formal coordination, there is a county website that I kind of started putting together. It's a link on your packet for county CERT. Just kind of like the chat group, it's a way to, for each program to have kind of a presence for some photo albums, for leadership lists, contact information, or just a link jumping to your team's specific site.
I mean, and I being from Sandy, obviously don't get any of this information, so I get all my information through the Utah County Telegram.
Just move.
We're in time, let's close it, still quiet.
So, I'll go ahead. We'll take one more.
what do people charge for training and PPE?
So that again is also up between your emergency manager, your program manager, and how each city wants to do it. We at Lindon do not charge anything for the course, but we do charge for the kit,
How much do you charge?
and it's $40.
What are the parts in the kit?
Parts in the kit is the backpack, goggles, gloves, and your helmet and vest.
One size fits none.
So it includes the backpack.
It's not,
So-
the backpack is
But that way, if someone wants to refresh the course, if they've already trained and they just want to refresh it, they already have their kit. That way, they don't have to pay a
Just
dime.
join us.
So in Springville, I don't remember what we charge.
25 a person, 40 for a couple.
Thank you, 40 for a couple, 25 per person, and it does not,
PPE?
that includes our kit, but we supplement from the city budget, because the last time I bought kits, it cost $60. So we're definitely supplementing.
In the city, like we just formed a 501c3 as a